Anime and car culture, quite literally a match made in heaven. Seeing as tuner culture was such a huge movement that it made waves all over the world from Japan to North America, it's no shock that it also found its way inspiring some animation artists in Japan to include some downright iconic cars in their work. Some anime creators even made entire shows based around tuner culture and the cars that built the core of the tuner scene in Japan. Today we're paying a small homage to these anime that helped diffuse car culture to the wider world and build the audience of JDM fans we have today. Please note that this list is in no particular order, so don't get yourself in a twist if a single car appears before another car. Starting off our list, we have the Renault Alpine A310 from Neon Genesis Evangelion. The appearance of this classic was completely unexpected to me. During my first watch through of this utterly stylistic and saturated world that is Neon Genesis Evangelion, I couldn't help but notice the strikingly blue Renault Alpine A310. The A310 is the successor of the A110, which of course was famous for winning the 1973 Monte Carlo Rally and the World Rally Championship. That is no small feat. This means that the A310 is technically racing royalty. However, the Alpine name has been somewhat underrepresented in modern motorsport, or at least it was until the Renault F1 team decided to rebrand to the Alpine F1 team. Now unfortunately, the A310 isn't really that big a part of the story in Neon Genesis, and it's really only used for building up Misato, the car's owner, up as a character. But there is this pretty cool scene where they use the A310 as protection from a nuclear bomb. I'm sure it won't protect you in the slightest, but it was still a pretty cool scene. Despite being a small part of the show, fans have really taken a liking to the car, to the point where model kits were produced to sell as merchandise alongside the release of the show. You can also tell the show's creators really did like this car and took the time to animate it pretty accurately. The 5-sequence gear shift even has the exact same number of screws as the real-life counterpart, although some aspects of the car's internals were modified according to taste. Overall though, animators did an excellent job of capturing the car's aesthetic and blended it seamlessly into the world of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Wangan Midnight is an anime that you might not know of, mostly because it has a focus on cars but not really on the plot or writing. The beginning is fairly slow and it takes a long time to set itself up, but if you like JDM cars going fast on a street-lit highway, then this is the anime for you. Akio Asakura is a street racer who spends his days skipping school, evenings working at his multiple jobs, and midnights racing between the lanes on the infamous Wangan Highway. The story begins with Akio finding a Nissan Fairlady Z about to be turned into scrap metal in a junkyard, but upon inspection the car is somewhat functional and only needs a few parts to get up and running. However, Akio is unaware that the car is actually cursed. It has killed all of its previous owners, so much so that anyone who spots the Nissan on the highway have nicknamed it the Devil Z because they know the owner is soon to crash and die. Akio doesn't care for this, nor does he believe in these stories, and decides to drive the Fairlady anyway. Now the Fairlady marks the first real success Nissan had with American consumers. Nissan was so afraid of putting their cars into the Western market that they actually created a second company called Datsun that they would then sell the car under. Thus it was actually called the Datsun 240Z in the Western market. Luckily for Nissan, the car did pretty well. The Fairlady had quite the performance for the price range it was in. The Western Datsun came with a 2.0 liter inline V6 engine, and the Japanese spec Nissan was a tad beefier with a 2.4 liter engine. While Wangan Midnight and the Devil Z haven't quite reached the popularity of IntialD and the AE86, it's still a pretty iconic car that has aged pretty well into the 21st century. In fact, if you were to ask me, I'd rather have the 240Z instead of its ancestors like the 3070Z, and that might be kind of controversial, I don't know. Let me know in the comments section below. Would you rather have the 240Z or the 370Z? Next up, we have an anime that I would love to tell you more about, but I can't find anywhere to watch it, which is a little bit frustrating because the plot seems genuinely interesting. X-Drivers takes place in a future where all cars are self-driving and automated, but like any system, there are always errors and some cars just go wild. This is where X-Drivers come in. They are pretty much just futuristic car wranglers who take their gasoline-powered cars and bring a rampant car to a halt. Now that's pretty much all I know about the plot, but good for us that they do feature some really iconic cars, the most iconic of which is the Lancia Stratos. I've said it before and I'll say it again, homologation specials are just forever iconic. There's something about rally racing during this time period that makes it unforgettable, and Lancia specifically is a company that has had a rich rallying history, but unfortunately doesn't have much of a presence among modern day automobile companies. One of Lancia's most iconic cars was the Stratos. It was designed by Marcello Gandini, who was also responsible for the designs behind Lamborghini's most iconic cars. The Miura, Diablo, and Countach were all designed by this man, and the engine in the Stratos was delivered straight from Ferrari's factories, so it's no shock that this car won over fans with its looks and its performance. The Stratos won the 74, 75, 76 World Championships and a number of other mixed terrain races. So obviously it's quite a successful rally car, both in terms of races won and cultural impact. While the only people who really know of these Stratos are Lancia and rallying fans, I'm glad to see it here in an unexpected medium like anime. Also, if you somehow find a place to watch X-Driver, let me know in the comment section down below, because I'm interested in checking this one out. I just can't find anywhere to watch it. Okay, this was pretty much inevitable. IntialD is the single greatest street racing anime to exist. The writing, animations, and the variety of cars makes it one of the best animes to watch, even if you're not into car culture. But if you are into car culture, then you pretty much know that IntialD is the holy grail for JDM fans. It features some crazy toga racing and some of the best music to ever be featured in a drifting track, Eurobeat. But when most people mention IntialD, they always talk about the Toyota AE86, which, don't get me wrong, is a great car, but it's talked about an awful lot. Instead, I want to bring attention to the rotaries featured in this anime, the pair of Mazda RX-7s. Driven by the Takahashi brothers, IntialD heavily features both a crystal white 1990 RX-7 FC and a competition yellow Mika 1991 RX-7 FD. In this video, we're going to focus on the yellow FD because I think it's the more iconic car of the two. The FD was a pretty big deal in the car community because it was the first mass-produced sequential twin turbocharged system to be exported from Japan. Of course, it also retained the RX line's signature beating heart, a Wankel rotary engine. The FD was mass-produced, but this iteration did not have as many cars produced as the FC. This was partially because the car did not comply with some dimension regulations, which meant the owners of the car would have to pay an extra annual tax just for driving the car. Only those who could bankroll the tax bought the RX-7, which means there were way fewer produced than normal. The third generation was the last to be produced of the RX-7 line before Mazda moved on with the RX-8, which is a car that really didn't hold a candle to the RX-7, but still found popularity among some North American owners. We've arrived at the final stop, and turns out it's somewhere that we've already been. Wangan Midnight. One of the cars featured by the creators of this show is the infamous Porsche 911 Turbo, nicknamed the Blackbird because of its jet black color and the sheer speed it has compared to any other racer on the Wangan. This 911 is driven by Tatsuya Shima. Tatsuya serves as the show's secondary protagonist and competition for Akio and the Devil Z. Tatsuya is a calculating driver and retains a stoic demeanor when faced with conflict, which is fitting for the stubborn and traditional design of Porsche. The Porsche 911 Turbo is of course one of the most iconic cars from one of the most iconic car manufacturers. To this day, Porsches serve as the benchmark to which all other high-end sports cars are compared to. There is a lot of history and engineering behind the Porsche badge to get the name to where it is today. One of the major stepping stones for that journey was the Porsche 911 Turbo. The Turbo was the first Porsche to come with a turbocharger, hence the name, and it also carried forth the whale-tail spooler from its iconic predecessor, the Carrera. Not only was the Turbo a big success in the markets, but it also continued Porsche's tradition of racing. After the production numbers were satisfied, a racing version of the 911 Turbo was created and dubbed the 935. It went on to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1979 under the hands of Kramer Racing, a private racing team that partnered up with Porsche for endurance races. Of course, today the 911 is still a pillar in the automotive industry. Popular versions of the 911 such as the GT3 and the GT2 serve to the hardcore fans who want to own road-going race cars, but there are still other cars in the lineup such as the Carrera, which serve to the community of car fans that just want to take corners a little too fast for their own good. So those were 5 iconic cars in anime shows. Can you think of any more? Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comment section down below. Of course, if you like this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more car content just like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you right here next week. Stay safe, take care, peace.